Good morning and salam sejahtera. Let me begin by thanking Jaga Mas Berhad for the opportunity to deliver some brief remarks in this event. It will be hard to overstate the importance of any meaningful effort that might bring us closer to the goal of mitigating the impact of climate change. In a region with among the highest home ownership, where up to 9 in every 10 families will buy the home that they live in, a conference on green housing must surely be on that list. So it's my great pleasure and privilege to be here today to share some thoughts with you on what the financial sector is doing and can still do more to manage climate-related risks and support the climate transition. Ladies and gentlemen, the importance attached to owning a home is a long-standing cultural norm in our society. While that has not changed, there is a growing awareness of the impact that the places we live and work in day by day can have on sustainability. The environmental impact of buildings in terms of greenhouse gas emissions stems not only from the energy use for lighting and air conditioning, but from the way in which buildings are constructed, operated, and managed. Globally, the building sector accounts for more than 40% of energy consumption, generates approximately 40% of all waste, and consumes 16% of water for construction. Here in Malaysia, buildings consume almost half of the electricity generated in the country. In response to this, green buildings were conceived, prioritizing environmental and health concerns, as well as resource efficiency throughout their life cycle. In the process, they are also responding to the changing preferences of an increasingly environmentally conscious population. As a country, Malaysia is committed to the target of reaching net zero emissions as early as 2050. In line with this and the priorities laid out in the 12th Malaysia Plan, state and city councils have increasingly stepped up efforts to spur the greening of their respective jurisdictions. DBKL, for instance, has issued the Kuala Lumpur Climate Action Plan 2050, which details out the actions necessary to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. While we will be mainly focusing on green housing at this event, it is important not to forget that this is a cross-cutting agenda that requires many different parts of the ecosystem to work effectively. With climate change, however, we are not simply pursuing an aspirational goal. We are dealing with an existential threat for which bold and decisive actions are needed to correct what has been described as the greatest market failure the world has ever seen. Central to these actions is the remarkable capacity of the private sector to innovate solutions that will move us closer to our climate goals, and our collective responsibility to harness that capacity. Ladies and gentlemen, physical risks associated with climate change are already here. They are with us and they are rising. For evidence, we only need to look to the spread of infectious disease, such as COVID-19, and severe floods that are occurring at shorter intervals and with increasing intensity. But transition risks are also intensifying. With the announcement of the net zero national target, further changes in climate policies are inevitable to achieve the target. Technological changes will also have significant economic and financial consequences for businesses and those that fund them. So will changing consumer preferences. And if that isn't sufficiently persuasive, the reality of a disorderly transition, once thought to be a risk further out into the future, has now been brought painfully home for many with the energy crisis that is confronting Europe. The financial sector has a crucial role in helping the economy and society mitigate these risks. At Bank Negara Malaysia, we see this from two perspectives. First, as part of our mandate to manage risks to financial stability, we expect financial institutions to understand how climate-related risk drivers can impact their risk exposures, including credit, market, and insurance risks from their lending, underwriting, and investment activities. We expect financial institutions to be able to identify, measure, and manage these risks well. Second, we believe that the financial sector can and should play a catalytic role in the transition towards a low-carbon economy through its control of resources that fuel the economy. With this in view, let me just take the opportunity today to highlight a few key developments that will shape the Malaysian financial sector's climate response in the coming years. Their response, in turn, will affect how financial institutions interact with businesses going forward. Beginning from July this year, financial institutions have started reporting their climate-related risk exposures based on the climate change and principle-based taxonomy developed for the financial sector to assess and classify economic activities within their portfolios. Aside from building a strong foundation for risk assessments and disclosures, the taxonomy is expected to encourage the flow of capital towards supporting transition activities. We recognize the need to minimize macroeconomic and social dislocations in the short term as we transition to a low-carbon economy. The financial sector taxonomy, therefore, does not adopt a binary classification of green and brown activities, but it recognizes credible efforts by businesses to actively reduce harm that their operations might be posing to the environment during transition. Based on an analysis of their material exposures to climate-related risks, financial institutions will be required to take actions to address high and unmitigated exposures. We have also strengthened the standards that we expect financial institutions to meet in managing climate-related risks. This includes an expectation for financial institutions to work with and support their customers in managing their transition. So more to the point, if businesses are committed and willing to undertake changes to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and green their operations, the financial sector should help them make that transition. This may take the form of appropriate financing or protection solutions and advisory services. On its part, the bank will continue to support transition activities through the 1 billion ringgit low-carbon transition facility and other funds for SMEs, which will complement funds extended by financial institutions to help SMEs in particular implement sustainable low-carbon practices. By 2024, we have also required all financial institutions to make disclosures in line with the recommendations of the Task Force on Climate-Related Disclosures. Given that such disclosures by FIs will ultimately depend on disclosures provided by their customers and counterparties, this will have implications on demands for climate-related information from businesses. Significant efforts are also being pursued to support climate risk management and transition through the Joint Committee on Climate Change, or JC3, which is co-chaired by the Bank and the Securities Commission. The JC3 serves as an industry regulator collaborative platform to drive and coordinate the financial sector's response to climate change. As part of efforts to scale up transition finance, JC3 is actively exploring pilot programs to test new green solutions and instruments. In identifying suitable projects for this program, priority will be given to climate-friendly projects that can help develop the broader ecosystem for green finance, such as carbon accounting and measurement frameworks, climate data aggregators, or green credentialing standards. Another key deliverable of JC3 this year is the upcoming publication of a data catalog that will point users to credible sources of critical climate data needed to support identified use cases. Now, all of this is to say that climate strategies are set to be a key focal point of financial institutions' business and risk decisions going forward. Within the property sector, it is encouraging to see major banks in Malaysia already offering targeted financing solutions for green residential homes in what used to be a niche market for a handful of smaller institutions. Also important are solutions that can help reduce GHG emissions from existing homes in the banks of financial institutions and increase their resilience to climate hazards. Such products are putting sustainability at the forefront of consumers' minds, not only when they decide to purchase a property, but also in making future decisions regarding renovations and energy and water supply systems. The introduction of such products is also an important start to collecting critical data for the assessment of risk differentials between green and other mortgages by financial institutions. While these developments are encouraging, experience in other markets would suggest that there is much more that financial institutions in Malaysia can do to unlock the potential to scale up green housing finance. For example, current financing activities are largely focused on the end consumer, which is just one part of the housing value chain. The incorporation of green considerations in funding extended to developers and those involved in the construction activities such as engineers and raw material suppliers remains largely untapped and can help offset or spread over time the generally high upfront costs associated with green buildings. Protection products such as green housing insurance also remains an unexplored market in Malaysia despite the steadily increasing number of green buildings in the country. Within existing product offerings, novel features such as additional protection for non-certified green buildings to rebuild in green when damage occurs could also be explored. Ladies and gentlemen, responding to the need for green housing calls on financial institutions to take an approach that is at once novel but not entirely unfamiliar. The journey towards greater incorporation of sustainability considerations is one with which many institutions have already embarked on. And a focus on green housing is both highly strategic and impactful to the broader agenda of greening the economy. It does, however, bring some specific challenges. Housing affordability in Malaysia is already presenting a significant challenge to home ownership, with house prices remaining beyond the reach of many Malaysians. This is further compounded by current high levels of household debt. The goal for institutions is to develop green housing solutions that would not substantially worsen these conditions and help steer the market towards a just and orderly transition. Rising to this challenge will require creativity and collaboration between public and private institutions. So I'm encouraged to see the broad range of participants assembled at this event, including social housing enterprises, government bodies, and non-profit organizations, which along with the private sector have the wherewithal to open up opportunities for the development of new business and funding models for green housing. Bank Negara Malaysia, working together with the JC3, is committed to supporting these efforts within our mandates for financial and monetary stability. On that note, I wish you productive discussions in the sessions ahead. We look forward to concrete outcomes from these discussions, given the heavy and urgent responsibility we all bear to mitigate the devastating effects of climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jessica Chew, the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, Bank Negara Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, riding on what the Deputy Governor said, our region now needs a more comprehensive plan for long-term economic growth, especially following the 2 lost years of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our next segment will lend more insight on Malaysia's flagship 12 Malaysia Plan, or 12 MP, its strategy, its roadmap, and also its role in promoting regional cooperation and integration, or RCI, for us to understand Malaysia's progress on green growth and also what's to come. Please welcome, from the Environmental and Natural Resources Division of the Economic Planning Unit, or EPU, in the Prime Minister's Department, Mr. Cik Kodir bin Bahro. Round of applause for Mr. Cik Kodir.